Cassiopeia, second meeting with the Phantom of Jesus Christ. 0002 Introduction of meeting participants. Irina, hello, dear friends. My name is Irina Podzorova. I am a contactee with extraterrestrial civilizations. Today we have the second part of the most important conference with the Phantom of Jesus Christ. Our curators are present, Lishioni from the planet Shimmer, Midgoskos from the planet Esseler, and representatives of Burkad, Marakunt, who is known as Archangel Gabriel, and the Phantom of Christ. He is already in a slightly different form. Now we were talking to him. He said that last time the Phantom's energy was 17% of his astral body, now it's about 11%, that is, he decided to slightly reduce the energy because he believes that this also affected the quality of the recording. And today he is asked questions by Vladimir Goldstein and Maria Sokolskaya, administrators and employees of our Cassiopeia project, who were there last time. Hello, dear friends. Maria, hello, dear friends. Vladimir, hello. We are glad to see everyone and really hope that today our very important meeting will also be interesting. Maria, dear Jesus, information from the Interstellar Union that you are not only an eternal spirit, but also are in an eternal body, is the most important news for the inhabitants of our planet and, of course, a sensation. This fact raised a lot of questions from our readers. Please allow us to ask a couple of questions about the life of your physical body. Is this possible? Irina, okay, ask. He says he welcomes everyone. 2 o'clock How the life of Jesus was arranged. Maria, we welcome you too. Tell me, please, how is your life arranged? Does anyone help you with housework, other than robots, if your vibration level is so high that not everyone can be near you? Irina, I live on the island, physically one of the living intelligent beings. Once every 1.5 to 2 months, sometimes less often for a few hours, students come to me, fly in or sail by sea. The rest of the time I am alone. Next to me there are 8 biorobots that help me with everyday matters. Only now, when I travel around the galaxy on a separate ship, as representatives of the Interstellar Union have already said, there are also biorobots next to me. Maria, thank you. 3:15 Jesus' favorite food is animal food. The eternal physical body of Jesus. Vladimir, thank you very much. My next question is somewhat related to the first. Please tell me what is your favorite food on Burkad, and what did you like to eat on Earth? Well, in addition to this, do you have additional to miss out genes that allow you to digest animal protein, and do you eat animal foods? Irina, I inherited the to miss out genes through the body of my mother on Earth, who, naturally, had them in her family. After the resurrection of my body and the destruction of the death and aging program, these genes remained active, since they did not include the death and aging program. These are genes that encode certain substances for processing material food. I did not have a particular preference in food, because everything that God gave me through people in childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, I consumed with the same sense of gratitude, felt strength, and rejoiced at it. There were no particular preferences. Now I live on the planet Berhad, and my favorite food is the milk of a local animal, and for some reason it is mixed with pollen from flowers. This allows you to maintain energy balance. I can eat more fruit. I can eat meat, but I do it quite rarely for the simple reason that my body has enough elements contained in the pollen of local flowers. I eat meat together with students who invite me to eat with them. Now he travels around the galaxy, and if they give it to him there, he can eat it. But when he is on Berkad, his main food is dairy products mixed with pollen and fruits. Vladimir, and what exactly is the meat food on Berkad? Because, as I understand it, the Berkhadians themselves don't eat it at all, because they don't have these genes. Irina: yes, but aliens from other planets can fly to them. After all, Berkad is part of the Interstellar Union, and those who eat it can bring other food with them. And they can also fly to my island. Vladimir: so it could be the meat of some animals from other planets? Irina: can be meat from animals, fish, birds, or sea animals, etc. These could be insects from those planets where they feed. There are insects of quite large species on other planets, which replace animals for some races. Vladimir: I see. Thanks a lot. 720 Limitations for Jesus. Abilities of levitation, teleportation. Maria: please tell me, are there any restrictions for you in this immortal body, established by God, the laws of the universe, or perhaps by yourself? And what qualities or abilities are there that, say, Earthlings do not have? Irina: restrictions. What do you call restrictions? For example? Maria: for example, levitation. Irina: do you mean by restrictions, a violation of physical laws known to Earthlings? Maria: yes. Irina: my physical body is not subject to such restrictions, because it can control the energy of its body and the surrounding part of space and time to an unlimited extent, or rather, limited by my Father. And since we are one whole, it means that it is limited by myself. Maria: so this means that you have the ability to levitate, you can fly through the air, move objects? Irina: yes, he is now showing me that he can disappear in one place and appear in another. Vladimir: teleportation. Irina: he shows me that he can transform one type of matter into another, make one from another. Maria, move in a physical body? Irina, yes. Maria, disappear and appear somewhere else? Irina, yes, he can. I perceive my body as one of the types of energy, and I can transfer this energy into another form of instantly moving radiation invisible to the eye and then collect it in another place, even at the other end of the galaxy. Vladimir, so you can, if you wish, without any ship, simply appear in a physical body on Earth? Irina, without a ship, yes, but when I travel on a ship and with biorobots, it shows that I behave like an ordinary humanoid. 953 What Jesus teleportation looks like. Vladimir, let's imagine that you decided to appear on Earth, and what would it look like? Let's say, people are standing, and suddenly in the middle of the lawn, so to speak, a figure appears. This is a physical body. Is this what it would look like? Or some other effect when it appears? Irina, before I appear in a specific place on Earth, before dissolving, before transitioning into the form of radiation of my physical body, I must clearly imagine the place and time where I must move, because if I imagine only the place, I will not do it in time. Then my body could, for example, be damaged if a car was driving there, and I could simply merge with a person, and he would be thrown to the side, because a certain energy is released there. And, especially, as you said, in the middle of the lawn, where there are people. I need to clearly know this place and space, imagine it, and only after imagining this place can I transfer my body into radiation and with a mental order move it to this place. How will it look from the outside? He shows me the air, and then there is a flash of yellow-white color, and a man appears in this place. What does this flash consist of? It was the surrounding atoms that released photons from that energy when they collided with the energy of my body, which was scattered in the form of radiation. Vladimir, I see. Thanks a lot. Maria, does this mean that you can do without air, underwater, or in outer space? Irina, if necessary, I can stop the vital processes in my body for a really long period of time, but not for infinity, and this will require a waste of my energy. 1241 Levitation in the life of Jesus. Walking on water. Apostle Peter. Vladimir, tell me, do you use your levitation capabilities in the conditions of Burkhard? Can you sometimes just fly over your island, fly from the island to some city and back in your physical body? Irina, purely theoretically, I can do this, but since overcoming the gravity of Burkhard and any other planet requires a certain amount of my energy, which can be spent on a completely different matter, for example, on changing the vibrations of Earthlings, then I am usually content with flying in the astral plane. Then this is quite enough for me. Vladimir, I have one last question on this topic. What does an Earthling need to levitate, at least to some extent? just unconditional faith in it, complete faith, or something else? Irina, levitation is for people the direction of their strength to suppress the Earth's gravity. Gravity attracts the physical body with a certain force, and the vital force of a person, which is released by him every second of time, is stronger than the force with which the Earth attracts his body. I want to especially emphasize, it does not surpass all of the Earth's gravity, but precisely that part of the gravity that attracts his body. And in order for this superiority of your life force to lift you above the Earth, you only need to direct it. To do this, you need to visualize how your life force pushes you away from the Earth. For this visualization to work, you need to imagine it, and doubts that the result will be achieved dispel your life force in space and do not allow it to push you away from the Earth, that is, to shield you, your body from gravity. So faith is such a force that helps you visualize and fulfill your intentions in any space and time. Vladimir, thank you very much. Still, I'll clarify one more thing. The Apostle Peter did not visualize anything. It turns out that only faith was enough for him to walk on the water until he doubted, or did he visualize there too? Irina, smiling. He shows me as if he was there now. Now I will translate it into words. He shows me quickly. I'm still in my physical body, so I need to translate these mental images you send me into words. In the evening, after talking with people, we parted with my students. They went on a boat to fish. They also had fishing at night. And they wanted to land on the other side of the lake in the morning. And I decided to stay alone in order to meet with the captain of the Burkhad ship. And Marak Count was there too. Naturally, I told them that I wanted to be left alone, since at that point in time they were not psychologically ready for contacts. He said that I wanted to stay alone and pray to the Father. They sailed away and I actually prayed to the Father. Then the ship came down. We had contact for about 2 hours. I was moved to Burkhad. There I talked with one of the contact specialists of the Commission, and then I was returned to Earth, and with my ray of the mental field, which I isolated from my aura, I found the place where my students were. Like a radar, it shows me now. Radar is a reflection of this ability. Mira Count just suggested it. I mentally calculated the point where my students were and saw that, while I was gone, the wind had risen and large waves had arisen. And I went to the boat by sea. Why didn't I fly? I didn't want to just waste my energy, because in order to walk, you need to suppress gravity less. I was wearing white clothes. As you understand, when the wind rises and a thunderstorm begins, practically nothing is visible, no stars, no moon, no lanterns in the sea either, so the students saw me in another flash of lightning when I came quite close, about 10 meters. One of them, I think I heard Jacob's voice, shouted that a ghost was coming. Why did they say that? They called a type of plasmoid a ghost. Why did he shout that particular thing? Because for them it was an unusual and possibly dangerous phenomenon, since one could expect anything from some nature spirits, especially in the middle of the sea in a storm. Hastening to calm them down, I said, "Be cheerful and brave, it's me, don't be afraid of anything." After this, I heard short negotiations, from which I sensed distrust and interest. And the Apostle Peter, calling me a teacher, said, "If it is you, order me to come to you on the water." I scanned his mental field and saw that if I told him, "Go," he would also imagine how he would do it, visualize it, and he would release energy sufficient to take several steps. At this time, I was already about 5 meters away. I told him, "Go," and I controlled his mental, psychological state. What happened when he went? When he got up, I watched him. When I told him, "Go," he completely believed that this was possible, because he knew that I was God and could not tell a lie. And when he did this, his energy, his life force, went down through the first energy center, through his legs, and formed enough strength, protection so that he could stand on the water. And when he stood on it, he really had no doubts. He went. At first he saw only me. When he walked about 3 meters, at first he had such a consciousness that he did not hear the sound of the waves, and then he heard, looked, and saw that he was standing on the water without any support to which he was accustomed, and the instinct of self-preservation told him that he was in danger. He couldn't switch from that instinct to the fact that he had done it. That is, instinct temporarily displaced from him for a few seconds the memory that he himself did it. Frightened, because fear is a loss of faith, he dissipated the energy that was holding him and began to drown. He didn't reach me about 2 meters. I approached him and asked why he doubted. After I got into the boat, and they all questioned me in surprise, I told them the law of faith and about the power of the earth, which you can so suppress with your strength, and during these conversations they did not even notice how we sailed to the other shore. For them, this time passed unnoticed. Vladimir, thank you very much. I think this will be a very interesting detailed answer for all our viewers. Irina, I just went on a boat ride with them. 25:39 About contactless conception. Krishna's parents, conception, and birth. Hercules. Zeus. Vladimir, we didn't even count on it, but here it was told in detail how one of the greatest miracles, the brightest described in the Gospel, took place. And I immediately want to move on to the next question about the miracle. Your mother Maria told us about your contactless conception on the Berkhada ship. It was not just, as we would now call artificial insemination, in vitro, but contactless conception using a special device. Is the same conception possible on Earth, not on a ship? Were there other cases when the same situation occurred in relation to other Earthlings, and is this possible in our time? Irina, the technique of introducing genetic information through a beam was quite common at that time and even earlier. For example, some children of Burkhadians, as well as Earthlings who were 7,000 years ago, were born in the same way. In the same way, for example, Krishna, who was a Shimorean, and some descendants of the Tumasushans were born. Fertilization itself through the beam was quite common at that time. Now this technique has remained in the science of the interstellar union, but according to the modern law of the interstellar union, such crossings of humans and aliens for life on Earth, as was previously the case, are prohibited due to the fact that this will provide evidence of contacts and everything that may happen after. At that time, representatives of the interstellar union were mistaken for gods. Now the consciousness is more materialistic, this will be perceived differently, so there will be other consequences. Vladimir, thank you very much. Did I understand correctly from the answer that Krishna was conceived in this way through a ray, and there was no physical relationship between the representative of the planet Shimmer and his earthly mother? Irina, the earthly mother Krishna had her own husband on earth, she was faithful to him. Representative Shimmera, who was Krishna's father, simply gave the genetic material. He also had a wife on earth. The fact is that spirits from the level of the higher angels, no matter what planet they are incarnated on, have a completely different attitude towards, you call it fidelity, but this is a connection with one energy, let's say so they have fine-tuning through body for one energy. And a connection with another energy, be it from another planet or with one's own, can lead to dissonance of their energy centers and then to an inharmonious connection with the previous physical energy. Why do they, and especially the aliens, feel this? Because their sensitivity to energy influences develops from childhood. If an alien decided to enter into physical contact with a representative of the Earth, then most often these were precisely those aliens who did not have a relationship on their planets, and if their contacts did not have a relationship with a loved one. Vladimir, that is, Krishna's mother had a relationship, there was love. Irina, she also had children. Vladimir, I wanted to ask, was there love with a representative from the planet Shimmer, but there was no physical intimacy? So? Irina, but they loved each other like spiritual brother and sister. Vladimir, and where was this process carried out in order for Krishna to be born? Was she taken on the ship too? Irina, they had been in contact on the ship for 10 years before. Vladimir, I see. I would like to clarify once again, were there any other cases in the history of the Earth that happened like this? Besides you, are there any names known to us? When did such contactless conception happen? Irina, Krishna was conceived. Hercules was conceived by the head of the Burkhad base on Earth. Legally, he already lived on Phyotissa. Genetically, he was a representative of the planet Burkhad. Vladimir, is this the one we know under the name of Zeus or not? Irina, yes. But for this, he used the same method for his contactee and for placing genetic material into an earthly woman. He did not come into physical contact with her, he had a relationship in Burkhad. 32-34 Conception of Confucius. The history of contactless conceptions on Earth and other planets. Reasons for hybridization. Zeus. Vladimir, I see. And regarding Confucius, please clarify how it was? Irina, this is already the planet Diceru. Indeed, I know that there were several more such cases. In fact, there were several hundred of them. If you look at the entire period, before the war it was even more common. But if we take 12,000 years, then there will definitely be 200-300 cases. He can't list them all, because he simply can't cover all of those studies. Vladimir, clear, we still have many questions. Irina, he heard about Krishna, because this is a spirit well known to him, they were each other's mentors, and about Hercules and his father, only that he is a representative of the planet Burkhad, and where he lives, they talk about it. Vladimir, we know about Zeus that it was a representative of the planet Burkhad, who was already in a colony called Phyotissa. And from there he flew. Okay, thank you very much, very interesting. Irina, if you look at our annals, the chronicles of the planet Burkhad and the interstellar union, I am sure you can find many such cases, because this was a fairly common technique for obtaining a hybrid with certain properties for the embodiment of the spirit with certain tasks. And what's more, this is typical not only for the Earth. On those planets with which the interstellar union comes into contact and which are being prepared for entry into the interstellar union, they can also hybridize precisely with the help of conception through a ray, and spirits can come to incarnate in order to unite the nature of the representatives of the interstellar union and the world that will only be enter it in the future. Vladimir, thank you very much for such an interesting answer. 35-04 Coincidences of the prayers Our Father and Pharaoh Akhenaten. Jesus Christ and the religious egregores of ancient Egypt, Judaism, and Christianity. Maria, yes, thank you. There is a legend that the Lord's Prayer, a famous prayer, is the same as the so-called prayer of Akhenaten from ancient Egypt. Did you have anything to do with Pharaoh Akhenaten? Irina, you know, I didn't have direct contact with him at that time. The prayer that you are talking about as Akhenaten's prayer is reminiscent of the Our Father prayer for the reason that he realized it through the higher self. That is, this is a prayer to the Father as a request for goodness, for protection from evil in the form of that light that he saw in his soul. Why did he know this? In general, the prayer I spoke about contains the basic wishes and needs of the incarnate spirit in relation to the Heavenly Father. And at the same time, the very structure of this prayer is built in such a way that it contains everything necessary for communication, that is, each line of this prayer can be the beginning of that inner prayer that will be performed later. Akhenaten learned this from contacts with the higher self and expressed it through the worship of the sun, through contacts with solar plasmoids. But he expressed it precisely to the Father, because he recognized himself as a part of him. Maria, thank you. Did you have any influence on the formation of religious egregor in ancient Egypt? Irina, I influenced the development of the egregores of Judaism and Christianity. The rest of the egregores developed from contacts with plasmoid, humanoid civilizations, and the spiritual world. I could come to individual representatives of other religions in the ray of Christ consciousness through their spiritual heart, but in any case, I did it within the framework of their religious ideas. Maria, thank you. 38.05 Monotheism. Polytheistic cults of religion. Bhagavad Gita. Vladimir, tell me, please, why did representatives of the Interstellar Union decide to give humanity monotheism, monotheistic religions about 6,000 years ago? As I understand it, we are talking about the Vedic, not even Vedic, but about the Hindu tradition around the time of the Battle of Kurukshetra, or in general, we are talking about another spiritual tradition. By the way, in what spiritual tradition then did this happen since the beginning of monotheism? Irina, monotheism, which has become known in a slightly different form than is known on Earth, is characteristic of the worlds of the Interstellar Union, at least for those worlds that became the creators of your race. And as soon as they created the bodies of the first intelligent people and raised them like children, naturally, special educators told them about the world around them, about themselves, about God, about the spiritual world. And the system of monotheism, the concept of God the Father as a being who is simultaneously in the external world, that is, in the universe and outside the universe, and in themselves, such an omnipresent spirit, this understanding was already laid down in the first people by the first educators of these children. After all, they did not immediately appear as adults. After the tragedy known to you with the scientist Selbit, who decided to interrupt the experiment and destroy the first people, known to him at that time and seemingly fair, but this plan of his did not materialize, did not work, then after that people were expelled from the base of Tumisout and Burkad. This Tumisout base was then so that they could begin to build their civilization, for which people were created. After their children were born and generations passed, they began to communicate with representatives of plasmoid civilizations, which seemed to them to be a word that can be translated into Russian as gods, that is, such somewhat luminous creatures. You remember that the word God is related to the Sanskrit word bhaga, a shining light being. Why did they present themselves this way? Because the energy of love, worship, reverence, and for some plasmoids, sacrifice, supported them, nourished them, allowed them to feel comfortable, gave them strength and, in the end, simply delighted the hearts of these spirits. Although they were incarnated in another density, they still remained intelligent spirits who feel love, understand it, strive for it only in a form in which they could communicate with spirits in third density. And from this moment the polytheistic cults of religion begin their march. They were not yet such formalized religions as we are used to seeing now, that is, there were no such temples, holy scriptures, or priests who serve according to the same canon. When I say the word cults, I mean a religious movement of very diverse forms that varied in different places at different times, and the fullness of this cult depended, first of all, on the personality properties of the contactee, who then, of course, was called not a contactee, and a prophet, a shaman, in different places a priest, for example, etc. The cult in which those plasmoids who were in contact with him invested it depended on this. In order to attract people to him, they performed, you would now say, miracles. They changed the weather, eliminated symptoms, and treated diseases, sent animals to meet the hunters, etc. By controlling the animal world, the natural world, plasmoid civilizations created the appearance that it was controlled by the priest himself, the contactee. And seeing this, people came to him. He acquired a certain authority, and from this the first proto-tribes were formed, in which there was theocratic power. The priest held the position of leader. Then it became somewhat divided, but the leaders of all the tribes, from which emperors, pharaohs, kings, and other rulers later came, much later, always kept priests, sorcerers, magicians, astrologers nearby, those who were in contact with the subtle world. And even now, at present, the situation on Earth has not changed much. Vladimir, I see. Thank you very much. Irina, why was it exactly 6,000 years ago? You are asking about Abraham now. Do I get it right? Maria, right. About Judaism. Vladimir, let us clarify, dear Jesus. The fact is that it is believed that the Bhagavad Gita was written about 5,000 years ago, just during the advent of Kali Yuga, or Krita Yuga. Irina, yes. 45-53 The purpose and time of the emergence of monotheism. Vladimir, I wanted to understand in what spiritual tradition monotheism first arose, because in what Hindu or some other tradition, and the approximate time when this happened from our time. Irina, the question just sounded like this: why 6,000 years ago did I decide to bring monotheism specifically to the territory of modern Palestine? in order to form a people. Why did Krishna bring monotheism to that particular country? In order to increase the vibrations of the people where he was located, to reduce, for example, caste hatred towards each other, hostility, since faith in one God would make it possible to unite the people more, and, moreover, he showed the path of love, the path of bhakti to this one God. In general, the purpose of creating monotheistic egregores in the noosphere of the earth is to unite people with a single idea, to direct energy to the development of spirituality, love, and in polytheistic egregores, people's energy is most often aimed at understanding what sacrifice to which God to make in order for another God to intercede. This gives rise to some kind of, what you now call, magical thinking. 47:52 When Abraham lived. Moses. Burning bush. Vladimir, OK. Could you clarify when approximately Abraham lived? As we know, this is the same spirit, who then came as Moses, and when this whole story with the burning bush took place, if we take the calculation from our time? Irina, a little over 4,000 years ago. 48:11 Gita, Battle of Kurukshetra. Vladimir, does this mean that the Gita was given before the Battle of Kurukshetra? Irina, yes, 300 years earlier. Vladimir, everything is clear, thank you. 48:30 The expected role of a monotheistic religion. Purposes of sermons. Maria, thank you very much. You have already answered the following question a little about the original plan and expectations for raising the vibrations of an individual people through a monotheistic religion. Tell me, please, how then should this plan be implemented in light of the fact that we now have several monotheistic religions? How should this unite humanity, and what was the original plan and expectation for the creation of several monotheistic religions? Irina, each individual nation in which a monotheistic religion was created naturally had its own language before the creation of this religion. In addition to language, there was already its own culture, based on some polytheistic cults, i.e. on the influence not only of plasmoid civilizations, but also of individual priests and certain priestly associations with each other. And in order to introduce a monotheistic religion, it was impossible to introduce one for all nations, since different peoples, different languages, different ideas already existed before its introduction. What was the goal? In every nation, the preaching about one God pursued the goal that the image created in this egregor would help unite this people, and in the future representatives of monotheistic religions would meet with each other. The preaching that this is one and the same God was planned and implemented, but under different names. As I said earlier, when you call God by one name, you are naming one of his countless energies. Therefore, all monotheistic religions are like a collection of books written about the same being, about its energies, its actions, but by different people in different eras and with different ideological combinations of meanings. Maria, as our history shows, languages are not really a reason for dividing religions. As you know, one monotheistic religion includes peoples of different countries who speak different languages. Irina, that's later. First, you need to spread this faith among one people, and then, when the books are written, you need to translate them into the language of another culture, another country. By the way, this does not always work out correctly. Much depends on the translator. Often the translator becomes more of a commentator than a translator. I just talked about the beginning of the formation of a monotheistic religion in some people. In order to form it, firstly, there must be some specific contactee who will transmit information openly, despite the resistance of the priestly class, which can be quite strong, and even more so, priests are often pushed to resistance by plasmoids that are deprived of their victims, because people turn to a monotheistic cult. This new prophet of the new monotheistic faith must be from a fairly high level, naturally, not only by birth, but by an achieved spiritual level. He must be quite sociable, courageous, decisive, and in some ways even a tough person, because, a person of a different character, his egregor will quite quickly be destroyed by certain forces that will, through people, resist the introduction of a new cult of a monotheistic religion. Therefore, Abraham was found. Later the same spirit in Moses came again to revive his people, his religion, when he saw that enslavement in Egypt had already lasted 400 years, and, accordingly, the Israelis, the Jews had already joined the cult of worshipping the Egyptian gods. Naturally, they lived there for 400 years, i.e. again switched to a polytheistic pagan worldview. And the Tumusians acted in the same way with Mohammed, and I myself acted in the same way in the event of contact with Ezekiel, with Daniel, with Isaiah, and with many of my other prophets and contacts. This is always contact at the person-to-person level. In rare cases, the main contactee is surrounded by several other contacts who can transmit information at the same level, and at the same time they will not compete with each other. Usually this is the main contactee, and a new egregor is formed around it. But the formation of a new egregor in time is always an interesting development of the structure of the energy information field, which is unpredictable in time. That is, there is a multivariate nature of events for a new egregor, and very often, after several hundred or thousand years, the religion that is formed on the basis of a small group of people inspired by the contactee bears little resemblance to his original ideas. Although they, of course, were preserved there in some form. 56.07 Differences and confrontations between religions. Messiah, Mashiach, Great Spirit. The purpose of Judaism. Maria, please tell me why the decision was not made to introduce the same monotheistic religion, i.e. not to change any new postulates or expand them, because we see that at the moment religions are looking for differences and opposing each other, or even waging war against each other, rather than looking for commonality? Irina, I want to tell you that people tend to wage wars and wage them in the same religion with each other. There are certain types of spirits who need to go through the experience of resisting surrounding circumstances, whatever they may be. And in this case, they are capable of waging war over one or two is that are written in my name. Maria, yes, that's true. We know that. But why was the decision made to create new monotheistic religions? Irina, what kind, for example? Maria, first Judaism, then Christianity, then Islam. That is, the goal was not pursued. Irina, the task of Judaism was precisely to bring me to earth. I told Moses about this, he wrote it down in his book of Deuteronomy. That at the end of times, this was the end of times for them, because for those spirits who listened to this, these several thousand years were the end of times. They lived, realized themselves in relation to time, so I told Moses that the Messiah, the Mashiach, the Great Spirit will come at the end of time, and you must follow him and fulfill his laws. And through other prophets, later through my contacts, I conveyed the characteristic features of this spirit, which they had to recognize. Everything was written there in detail, from which city, and from which tribe of Israel he would be, and what characteristics Mashiach would have. Therefore, the goal of Judaism was precisely the birth of me on this planet through the egregor. 59. 17 Reasons for the physical destruction of Jesus. Maria, change Judaism. So to speak, Judaism should have smoothly transitioned into Christianity, and not a new religion should have formed that opposed the old one. Irina, in my earthly body, when they wanted to stone me for preaching God's love and for doing good on Saturday, violating their holiday, I told them that the image of God that they had at that moment when I was with them spoke, turned into an enemy of God. In Greek it was devil. And they became very irritated, since in their understanding they worshipped the God of Israel, Yahweh. Then I reminded them of several passages of scripture that were given to Moses in the Torah, and I said to them, if you still believed Moses, you would believe me, as he wrote about me. I said this not to ordinary believers in the temple, not just to ordinary priests, but to the chief priests, who were obliged by their position to monitor the implementation of the law. And, nevertheless, this only accelerated the decision of the conspiracy between the Roman troops and the top of the Jewish synagogue at that point in time about the physical destruction of me as a person. 101 and 33 seconds. Is Christianity a reformation of Judaism? Law of Moses. Changing the canons in accordance with the vibrations of the earth. New Testament. Maria, So I understood correctly that Christianity was conceived as a reformation of Judaism? Did you want to help refine the concept of God? Irina, it was the new law, the New Testament. This was not just a reformation, it was a change in the canons of Judaism so that new commandments, new laws could correspond to the changing vibrations of the earth at that point in time. Since Judaism had already existed for 2,000 years at the time of my birth, a little more, and during these 2,000 years the earth made what you now call a quantum leap, a transition, i.e. made such a transition to another era, where there were other laws. For example, the death penalty for crimes was no longer required, which I showed in the case when they brought to me a woman who was caught in the act of cheating on her husband. According to the law that I gave to Moses, she was to be executed. This was the case at that point in time when I spoke to Moses. It corresponded to the vibrations of the earthly race. But when I came on my own in my body, it no longer corresponded to the new vibrations of the earth. And realizing this, some of the guards, who were the servants of the high priest, brought this woman to me and asked what I would advise her to do. This was done to trap me in logic because, following the law of Moses, I was obliged to say that they must fulfill the law, since I myself gave it. But before that, I conducted many sermons among the people, which, naturally, the priests heard that this law was abolished by the law of love. If I had insisted on the execution of the law, that is, on the execution, I would not only have contradicted the words of my sermon, I would have generally destroyed my work, for the sake of which I incarnated. So I said the only thing I could say in that situation, he who is without sin among you, let him throw the first stone at her. I said this in the physical body, whom you know as Jesus Christ, to precisely those people, but I did not say this to Moses and his brother Aaron, and all his descendants, so that they would check themselves for sins before throwing stones, since in other times they were not by nature capable of doing this. They had to go through a path of some social, and spiritual development. Every religion corresponds to a certain vibration. He tells me now, at that point in time, Judaism corresponded, then Christianity corresponded. And when I said this, and they all left, I did not forbid them to stone her and did not order them to do it, I left it to them to decide for themselves. And they decided as it should be according to the new law. They listened to themselves and left her alive. But when they left, the matter did not end there. There was a rumor that I was not just opposing the law of Moses, but doing it in a way that was very dangerous for Judaism. That is, I was presented as an opponent of religion, destroying the foundations of our fathers, and in such a way that they themselves could not answer me. 1:06 and 57 seconds. Change of religions. Correspondence of vibrations to egregor, religion. The physical death of Jesus to change the vibrations of earthlings. Maria, wonderful, Wise answer. We all know him. I'm just trying to understand, was it planned for Christianity to replace Judaism? That is, Judaism will turn into Christianity. At the moment, there are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all three religions. Was it your plan to? Irina, this cannot be planned. By change, do you mean the disappearance of one and the appearance of another? Maria, yes. Irina, this cannot be planned, because each religion corresponds to certain vibrations. The egregor still remains to exist. I understood perfectly well that some would move to the new egregor both from Judaism and from the pagan plasmoid cults of the surrounding countries and peoples, but the egregor that remained accumulated for 2,000 years and became a fairly strong energy unit. It was simply impossible to dissipate it, since its energy cannot disappear anywhere, it can only be transformed. Therefore, in this egregor that remained, only those people could remain in it or new people could come to it who, in their vibrations, corresponded to this egregor. What does by vibration mean? I will explain, because everyone on Burkad understands this, but I do not see understanding among some people now on Earth. What does it mean to match the vibration of religion? This means that those laws, not rituals, but namely laws, the position of religion must coincide with the internal moral law in the heart of a person, with his image of God and the laws of God, which he is ready to fulfill. This is called matching vibrations. Why did those people throw away the stones and leave? Because within themselves they corresponded to the vibrations of the new Christian egregor. Why did the high priests, his servants, decide to kill my body? Because their vibrations at that moment in time corresponded to the vibrations of the old egregor, which was fighting the new one. Both they and the egregor, as an energy informational unit, with their vibrations fought against the creation of a new, dangerous unit for them, which could destroy the whole thing that they had been building for, one might say, 2,000 years. I understood perfectly well what would happen, what I was going to do. It was my choice to create this religion in those conditions and at that moment. I understood perfectly well, as I have already said, that there was a very high probability that my body would be executed in this way. I could have come to any other period of history through my mother. She could also incarnate through other people when such laws no longer existed. But my choice was precisely this in order to direct my energy to change the vibration of all earthlings. It was only possible to do this the way it happened. 1:11 and 23 seconds scenarios for the development of religions. Why do spirits need to go through the horrors of war, epidemic, devastation? Maria, tell me, please, did you see in the time tape in the spiritual world the scenarios for the development of all three religions, that they will oppose each other, that they will wage wars, that this will lead to discord. Was such a scenario known? Irina, of course, he was famous. But the whole point is that the polytheistic religions that existed before the creation of these religions did not reduce discord. I have already said that there were many groups of people and different tribes who competed with each other for the influence of one or another god, and this could easily escalate into war if only one follower of one god offended the follower of another. Insult was more the feeling of the one who was insulted if, in his understanding, justice was violated. All this happened due to the lack of awareness of people as spiritual beings. They did not realize themselves as immortal spirits, parts of God. And they were not aware of their neighbor, a representative of another people. They could recognize a representative of their people as their brother, but they no longer recognized a stranger. There were such unconscious things on Earth, and this is the period that many civilizations go through. Why does this happen? In order to understand that it is better to build peace, tolerance, and respect for any life on any planet, many spirits need to go through the horror of wars, devastation, epidemics, famine in order to understand how terrible it is and reach out to the light. 1:13 and 38 seconds Christianity. The reason for the emergence of Islam in the Arabian Peninsula. Maria, please tell me, based on the experience of the polytheistic religions that you just listed, why the decision was not made to spread one monotheistic religion, perhaps taking into account the peculiarities of the climate, the characteristics of the people, but to carry one idea and the same principles. Irina, this was done in the case of Christianity. I told my disciples to bring all nations to me through baptism, that is, with this word I opened the door for them to preach and at the same time to enter into the egregor of people of other nationalities and religions, not only Judaism. Maria, why then was the decision made to introduce Islam, and not Christianity, into the territory of those peoples? Irina, because at the time when Islam was introduced, Christianity was not accepted on the Arabian Peninsula, there were many gods and spirits. There were some attempts to preach Christianity, but they received severe rebuff, again from local priestly and government circles, who were afraid of losing power and influence. And, as you can see, it was necessary to introduce a monotheistic religion on a basis closer to the Arabs in order to unite them. Maria, thank you. 1:15 and 34 seconds Contradictions in the interpretation of the phrase "your father is the devil." How is an idol different from God? Trade in temples. Metanoia. Vladimir, dear Jesus, thank you very much. I just want to clarify on the previous question. Tell me, what exactly did you mean when you told the Jews, "Your father is the devil"? We are often asked about this, and many interpret it in such a way that Yahweh is the devil, their spiritual father, and how then do they not correlate? After all, you were Yahweh, and you told them that he was the devil, and, accordingly, a conflict begins, contradiction. Irina, I told them this because their vibrations corresponded to hatred, anger, rejection, which were incompatible with the egregor that I built as Yahweh. I know this idea that as if I called Yahweh the devil, it turns out that I called myself. I'll explain now. He says, this conversation took place almost immediately after one event. He now showed me the temple, you call it a synagogue, a courtyard filled with animals for sacrifices, and I came there, because in the temple of Yahweh I often taught people. I was allowed there as a preacher, since at that time he was also studying to become a rabbi. There were these, as you call them, not courses, but from a priest, from a rabbi, from a teacher, you receive a kind of initiation. I received it when I was not yet 20 years old, before baptism. I came once again to the temple of Yahweh, to the synagogue, and saw that there was a holiday when animal sacrifices were being prepared, the law about which was described to me by Moses and written down by him in the book of Leviticus. And when I arrived there, I saw that in the temple itself, where prayer should take place, the law was being violated. Animals were sold that, with their screams and trampling in place, interfere with prayer, and I also saw that in the synagogue there was a special currency, namely temple currency. Money, in order for a believer to be able to buy a lamb, kid, or dove for sacrifice, it was necessary to buy it from merchants. They exchanged their money there, which they brought, and I saw and felt this mental atmosphere of this temple. The fact that ordinary believers, with the knowledge of the priests, are being deceived by money exchangers and are putting the wrong money on the scales. There were already coins, but they were also weighed on the scales, and all this together gave me the feeling that I had to cleanse this place of these energies. I looked around, took several ropes lying on the floor, with which I drove the bulls to the exit of the temple, and reminded the priests that the animals should not be inside. Then I approached those who were changing money and said that they should be outside the temple, since only believers should be here in a state of prayer, and not the clinking of coins and these negative thoughts of people who understand that they have been deceived. They were simply afraid to say that they were given too little. Said, "Cleanse the space of my Father's temple." Why did I say my Father and not me? Because I do not separate myself from him. But they said that I had no right to do this, and then I overturned the tables with their coins, as I felt cleansing energy at that moment. I did not want to harm these people, but I felt that this space needed to be cleansed of the negative energies that they brought here. And after the guards came running and the senior priests came, I began to tell them from their scriptures those laws that were supposed to be fulfilled in the temple, which they violated. And then they saw that I was not breaking the law, but fulfilling it. This all happened in front of the people. They understood that they showed their ignorance and non-compliance with the law in front of the people and pretended that they agreed with me, but they harbored resentment and evil within themselves and even then decided to take revenge on me. And when they asked me why I allowed myself to restore order in this way, I told them that my Father's house should not turn into a house of trade. I considered and consider this very important. The space where believers devote themselves to prayer, reflection about God, about their Father, should be free from the energies of the financial egregor. These are egregores that have slightly different vibrations. They can be nearby, but they should not interfere with their energies, distract from thoughts about God, the spiritual world, and cause any unpleasant associations with their life experience. There must be a temple in the temple, and the house of goods or trade, or a store should be nearby. I told them that this cannot happen in my Father's house, and only then did we start talking about the fact that they are the children of Abraham, therefore they do his deeds. And in this context, I told them that their father is the devil. Now tell me, if Yahweh considered the devil, would I call his house the synagogue, the house of my Father? I told them about the image that they created for themselves in the place of Yahweh, such an idol, one might say. How is an idol different from the living God? It is created by imagination. Some image created by the imagination in the mind and heart of a person, which does not even prescribe any laws of the spiritual world according to which the vibrations of the spirit can increase. He simply says that if you have broken the law, then you must make a certain sacrifice to my priests, and by this you will be cleansed, not by changing yourself, but by sacrifice. And this kind of idol, in which there is the energy of a financial egregor, and a sense of superiority, etc., they created in their hearts, inside the Jewish egregor, such an image of God. And in them, of course, in their minds. And it was this image that I called the devil. And he continued, for he is a murderer, from the beginning he did not stand in the truth. Why did I call him that? That person whom I called the devil did not stand in the truth, although he was very close to me, and we were, in your opinion, spiritual brothers. But he could not resist this truth, he descended in his vibrations, and became a devil. And this image that these priests formed, to whom I said, your father is the devil, this image also led to destruction, to a lowering of vibrations, because it did not allow spiritual development, but simply allowed one to pretend to be pious and calmed the person's heart by doing so. That he leads a righteous religious life. At the same time, changes not only in behavior, but in these mental attitudes, which led to destruction, to crimes against oneself and loved ones in the absence of love in all forms. And this was a religion of self-justification and covering up one's low vibration states with the image of God. This was a diabolical idea, because it did not allow us to see the true God, who calls us to love, to the light, to self-awareness and to true metanoia, repentance, and therefore the correction of one's actions in the light of God. And, naturally, my beloved son David knew that the sacrifice to God is a broken spirit, and he will not despise a humble heart. This showed that 1,000 years before these priests, David understood that the most important sacrifice is metanoia. 1:29 and 18 seconds. The first commandments given to Moses. Technologies for applying commandments to stone. Vladimir, thank you very much. I think everyone will be satisfied with this answer, very detailed and, in my opinion, very convincing. Next question, Dear Jesus, tell me, what were the very first commandments that you gave to Moses and recorded on the first stone, which he then broke after the story of the calf, and what technology was specifically used to apply these commandments? Irina, he shows me that it was 2 stones. He takes the device and applies it with a beam. There is a ray that seems to melt the stone a little, under its action depressions are formed, as he writes. Vladimir, that is, it was, in fact, an engraving on a stone. Irina, well, yes, it kind of makes a ray, letters appear. What were the commandments? There were 10 commandments that I considered the most important. In general, there are many more commandments in the Torah, but these were important as steps to me, to the higher spiritual world. Naturally, these were words about how they should worship only one God, since this is a monotheistic religion, so that they should not create images for themselves or anything earthly, no animals, birds, fish, because these images were often used by fans of plasmoid cults. And, having made such an image, their energies went into their egregor. And then the egregor that is being formed by me would mix with their energy. Nothing would have worked out. Vladimir, so these commandments did not differ from those that were later transmitted to Moses? We are talking about the very first ones, the stone with which he broke. Irina, no, they were not different. I then simply repeated it. Maxim, another 5 minutes. Irina, they have a lot of questions. Vladimir, thank you very much. We will do more conferences. Dear Jesus, we have a lot of questions. Do you mind if we make more than 3 conferences? Maxima, not 2, but 3. I understand. Vladimir, we were going to have 3, but now we want even more, because we don't have enough here. It's gradual. Maxim, I think they will make concessions to us. Maria, can I ask the next question? Irina, yes. 1:32 and 10 seconds about the likelihood of the forced introduction of a new religion. Experience of the incarnation of the Spirit. War, aggression. Maria, please tell me, you yourself, and the interstellar union were aware of the fact that the introduction and strengthening of each new monotheistic religion, first Judaism, then Christianity and Islam, would take place by force, that is, with blood and sword in relation to existing peoples and their religions. And how was this supposed to subsequently raise their spirituality and vibration? Irina, the question is clear. Thank you. The introduction of a new religion at that point in time, when people's awareness was at the level at which it was at the time of the introduction of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, indeed, along the lines of probability on the time tape, did not imply practically any other outcome other than war. It was simply clear from the lines of probability that if monotheistic religions had not been created, then these polytheistic religions would still have entered into military conflicts, and the same people, the same spirits, only for a different reason, the seizure of territory, the struggle of different priestly classes, that is, the war that was waged for the sake of introducing a new cult would simply be waged for a different reason, preserving their territories, for example, or revenge for some kind of insult. The aggressive energy that accumulated in the egregores of the earth had to find a way out in active actions, otherwise it would destroy people's bodies. The fact is that physical war, physical battle is only the last stage of aggressive energy accumulated in the Earth's noosphere. First, there is a long period of aggression within some people, within some group, and only after a fairly long period of time does this develop into physical actions. It was through monotheistic religions that each person was given a greater opportunity to get closer to the one God than in polytheistic religions, because it was said that there is one Creator and Father of all people on earth, who is love, to whom you must strive if you want to live in peace, just as He is the King of the world. This was done, among other things, to stop wars, violence, and injustice. Why do these things still exist on Earth after such a long time? I want to remind you that the age of your earthly civilization is only 1/10 of the age of the more developed races in the galaxy. You still have a long road of development ahead of you. Many civilizations went through this period of social upheaval and war. And I also want to say that the spirit who is born on a certain planet in a certain historical period is necessarily introduced to the fact that military actions are possible with such and such a degree of probability, in which with a certain degree of probability he will participate if he agrees to incarnation. Or if there is some kind of epidemic or some other disaster that could lead to a premature exit from incarnation. And for this spirit, for example, the period of incarnation is 75 years, but in this territory there is a 70% probability of military action. If he is born a man, with such and such a degree of probability he can participate in them, and with such a degree of probability he can die in them. Approximately such plans of incarnation are given to the spirit, they are told to him, but he sees it himself. This all happens in mental contact with mentors. And many spirits who need to process within themselves, harmonize the energy of aggression and learn, for example, to love enemies, come to terms with the loss of a physical body at any age, that is, to completely trust God, choose the experience of incarnation in such years of instability, conflicts, revolutions. 1:38 and 23 seconds. Religion of the Interstellar Union. The purpose of human life on Earth. Maria, thank you. Tell me, please, on the planets of the Interstellar Union, what forms of religion and beliefs of interaction with God predominate? Irina, internal religion of light, when from childhood a child is taught to seek the law of God that is embedded in the spiritual heart of every rational being. Maria, so, one might say, a monotheistic religion? Irina, neither monotheistic nor polytheistic, it is not theistic at all. It is like merging with the divine light, the desire, and desire to become its conductor into the material world. It's like feeling like one whole thing. This is what I said about the religion of the Interstellar Union, some of the commandments from which I gave in the Sermon on the Mount. This is when I said that your light must shine before the people. This was one of the main commandments. And then I said that the purpose of human life on earth is the desire for endless perfection. Not to the kind of perfection of which I was the ideal, but to the perfection like that of my Father. And He is absolute love. And I preached this ideal of the perfection of absolute love, love for oneself, for one's neighbor, love for God every day and hour in word, deed, and thought on earth. And now I raise my vibrations along with the vibrations of the people who connect with me through the sacrament of communion. I raise the vibrations of all of us together so that everyone can feel me in their hearts and feel themselves as me, and me as themselves. And to feel that we are all united in the light of God, and the person you look into the eyes is me, and those perhaps harsh, rude words that he says to you are the same energy of love, but distorted by the perception of this particular, the part of me that doesn't realize it. Maria, that is, a new level of divine literacy or divine perception. Irina, this new level was given 2,000 years ago. Maxim, well, at this divine level we will probably end this conference. Thanks a lot. Vladimir, let Jesus simply turn to us, if possible, if he has something to say beyond the question, and we will finish this conference with hope for the next one. 1:42 and 6 seconds. Conversion of Jesus. Irina, he says, I like your questions, the questions of the Cassiopeia project subscribers and the way you select them. They are very important for every person, because everyone wants to know the nature of human sins manifested through religion, because this is the main reason that can push a person away from religion. And therefore these questions are very important. How violence could be allowed in religion, for what purposes, and why such decisions were made that led to wars, and why there are wars on Earth or on other planets in general. What is war anyway? These questions about aggression and the energy of aggression, about its application in the earthly world are very important, since in its egregores of your world there is still a lot of energy of anger, condemnation, struggle, which manifests itself in the minds of individual people. I want to remind you that physical war is only a reflection of the spiritual war that goes on at the mental level between consciousnesses of different levels. Until the wars between minds end, it is impossible to end the wars on the physical plane. For any reason, one religion, many religions. People who have been infected with the virus of aggression will manifest it in any environment. And it can only inhabit those minds that are in a state of constant dispute and resistance to the world around them. This is a certain type of spirits that goes through its lesson of acceptance, submission, meekness, and humility, then acceptance and peace. Well, and, of course, all these qualities fit into one huge word, love. This is the light that is in each of you. I am ready to meet with you every month and answer your questions through Irina Podzorova as a contactee, and I also communicate with other contacts in the form of phantoms or Christ consciousness. I already know how many of my contacts will watch this video, and I want to remind you that the panacea for war and violence lies within you. This is the light of love that everyone now feels after watching this video. I am sure that you have touched this light, but it is not so much in Irina, and not so much in me, as in you. This is your own light. If you always, under any circumstances, remain in it, and every person will do this, then any wars, injustice, corruption, violence, and all other criminal and lawless structures of your society will simply crumble as unnecessary, and the energy of their egregores will turn into light. This was the purpose of my incarnation, and is the purpose of every increase in vibration when connecting with you. I feel everyone who partakes of my body and blood. I feel your troubles, sadness, aggression, happiness, tears, your children and grandchildren. I'm with you. And I am you. And when you realize that you have become me, you will enter the interstellar union, and your soul will enter the kingdom of heaven. 1:47 and 8 seconds. The influence of this meeting on the entry of planet Earth into the interstellar union. Vladimir, thank you very much. Also, please tell me, dear Jesus, can you see in the time tape, approximately how many years has the Cassiopeia project and specifically our meeting with you brought forward the date of our entry into the interstellar union? Probability. You don't have to answer. Maxim, on this note we will end our conference. Vladimir, we can meet with him. Let the latter say, around May 8th at the retreat. Irina, at the retreat I don't know. Vladimir, May 8th to 9th. Maxim, we'll watch. We don't know. Irina, let's see. You will be with us. Vladimir, no, I asked Jesus, I thought he would now say, yes, I can. Irina, he says that he is ready to meet every month. Vladimir, less than 30 days will pass. Fine. All. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Jesus. Thank you so much, Irina. Maxim, bye everyone. Maria, Irika, thank you, dear. Well, how are you there? Irina, where did you go? Vladimir, well, we'll finish recording then. Yes? Maria, yes, finish. Premiere May 2, 2021. Participants: Irina Podzorova, contactor with extraterrestrial civilizations. Maxim Ruzin, head of the Cassiopeia project and the Center for Spiritual and Physical Development. Jesus Christ is the leader, the head of the Christian religious egregor on earth, and not only, the firstborn Son of God, our elder brother. Marak Count is a representative of the planet Burkad, a disciple of Jesus Christ, who is known in the Christian religious egregor as the Archangel Gabriel. Midgaskaz, representative of the planet Esseler, biologist, psychologist, specialist in alien life forms. Vladimir Goldstein, administrator of the Cassiopeia project. Maria Sokolskaya is the administrator of the Cassiopeia project.